I've gotten into fasting, different types of fasting, because I've come to learn that there is not just one type. I thought that fasting, being a Muslim, would primarily be the Ramadan fasting, where we fast from sunrise to sunset. We don't eat or drink anything, and then we break our fast at sunset. And that's a fast that I've known for all my life. But there are other types of fasting which I'm quite fascinated with, as well as Ramadan fasting, which also is incredibly good for the health. One particular type is a type of medical fasting, I guess you can call it, where you're fasting for long periods of time, and that could mean days. So that means absolutely no drinking or eating for, say, 3 days. And it's remarkable what it's done for my energy levels, for my health, for my emotional and mental well-being. It's incredible the level of clarity and the level of joy you actually feel. So there must be some sort of explosion of wellness and good health that comes with that type of fasting. I can testify to it myself, but of course I would like to learn about it more. And of course, the third type of fasting that I've really gotten myself into is the intermittent, I guess is what they would call it, but I'm talking like long intermittent. So for example, I would fast for 20 hours and allow myself to eat within a 4-hour window. Or as of lately, what you and I have been doing is having one meal a day, the OMAD system, which is you fast all day long and then you just give yourself that time for one meal a day, which you and I have been doing around midday. And in that one meal, you pretty much eat as much as you would eat for the entire 2 or 3 meals a day that you would normally have. I'm not sure which is the absolute best one, but I do understand that the right type of fasting would create something called autophagy. And I know that you taught me more about this, this condition and this state. Maybe you can explain a little bit more about what happens when you reach that state in your fasting.
Yeah, so we have a tendency to call fasting many things that are different. The benefit we see when we abstain from eating comes from probably very strongly ingrained physiological processes, because we have been evolving on this planet for millions of years. And it's very new that we would have access to food all the time, several times a day.
Right. Because there was a hunter-gatherer sort of most optimal way of eating, which was that you don't eat until you go out and get your food and cook it. Right?
Yes, exactly. And let's say the hunting was not always successful.
Yeah.
So now you have to put yourself in a very realistic view of what happens then. If you were to become weaker, there would be no chance to get another hunt going. So our bodies are equipped to store energy. And we have, if you take a lean person, they probably have each of us, if we are lean, we have probably up to 40 days of reserve. And this is something that is mostly rediscovered these days, but it's a natural state not to be deprived of external food and then have access to our internal storage of food. Because all the fat we have on us, it has a function. It has a function of storing nutrients and energy.
And some of that storage is also toxins, which fasting will help to eradicate, correct?
Yes, that's one of the explanation of why people are getting fat, even if they are eating low levels of food.
Right, low quality, which means not so nutrient dense.
Exactly. If what you eat is toxic, the body has ways to get rid of the toxins up to a certain level. So when these mechanisms are overwhelmed, the mechanism that the body chooses is to store these toxins into fat in order to get it out of the system. And when you access this storage, this fat, now these toxins are released.
Okay, so fasting takes care of what you don't eat, which is nothing, and drink. So you don't put anything in your body in your most optimal, ideal type of fast. They have this thing called the water fast, but then, that's not a fast. That's a water diet. You're just drinking water, and that's not optimal because your digestive system, your stomach is still working. And the whole idea is to give that whole system a rest and not put anything in your mouth so that you don't activate it.
Yes, exactly. We are meant to have these two faces. It means one coin with two faces. One phase is anabolism, where we construct things, and catabolism, when we destruct things and use things.
And metabolism.
And the metabolism is is the overall thing. It's both catabolism
processing of it.
and anabolism.
Right.
So when you know that in a day, if you eat like 3 times a day, 60% of your energy is used by the digestive system. It's very energy taxing. So imagine you have 100 units of energy. 60%, so 60 units are used for digestion. Then it is estimated that our brain, which is very energy consuming organ, is using 20 to 25% of your energy. Okay, so now you have 60% digestion, 20% is, or 25% is your brain. Then you have movements, your muscles are using probably 10 to 15% of your energy. What remains is at most 5%.
Right.
And with this 5%, and all of this is like energy that is not dedicated to repairing and constructing. And our body needs maintenance, right? 5% is not enough. So if you stop eating, the digestive system gets a rest, and this 60% of energy is now dedicated by the body into very important tasks, which is to repair the body.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And to construct.
Right. So if it's not eating something external, it's eating something internal, so to speak, in a very, very generalistic way.
So every cell in your body needs to be nourished every second, otherwise it dies. When you don't get food from external means, meaning you don't eat, you still need food. You still need energy constantly.
Yeah.
But there is a mechanism. If food enters externally, your storage is not accessible by the body.
Right. It's not getting used up because you keep adding more.
It's like you have a system, you have a fridge and a freezer. Your fat, your storage of energy and nutrients, it's in the freezer. As long as the fridge, which is what you get externally, what you eat, there is anything in the fridge, the freezer is closed.
Got it.
And this is managed through insulin in particular. So it's only when you don't put anything in your mouth that the freezer is open and you can now access this storage.
Right, and start really cleaning house in your storage area.
So,
right.
Accessing the fat storage you have, and half of it is water. The fat is 50% water, and the rest will be transformed into ketone bodies that makes your cells run even more efficiently than it does on glucose, for example. So this concept of returning to a natural state where it's not normal that you're always eating, because you need to dedicate part of the day to processes that the body needs to be able to put in place to repair and to build, right? So what happens after 2 or 3 days of fasting, you are accessing your storage, and at one moment the body will recognize that, let's say, it needs to manage this storage much more efficiently, because apparently it's a time of scarcity. So what it will do, because it's very intelligent, is to scan your whole body and identify tissues that are not functioning very well, that are useless. It can be excess skin. When people have been losing weight, they have this loose skin. It can be tumors. It can be many things that are not optimally functioning. And it will eat those. Destroy those.
I have noticed with fasting, your skin tightens, and it does optimize the beauty aspect of it. So at least you look more youthful and glowing, and the hair is so much nicer. So there is something remarkable on a health level and also on a beauty level. But obviously, if you have good health, then the beauty does sort of get more highlighted.
Yeah, but it has always been a very natural process that the body would recycle its old cells and then reuse the proteins inside them, because fasting is very sparing in terms of muscle. You need to access the fat, but you still need proteins. There are proteins that you need to get from external sources, and if you don't, the body needs to find these amino acids somewhere in your body. But it will target the non-functioning tissues.
So the fasting takes care of what you're not putting in your mouth, which is absolutely nothing. You shouldn't even be putting a grain of salt in your mouth. Nothing. You absolutely do not take anything in, because that would offset the digestive system taking its break so that it can work internally. When you break your fast and you can eat and drink, that's when you need to make sure that you're absolutely putting nutrient dense, clean food into your system. So what is recommended to break the fast with and to continue to eat until your next fast?
Yeah, there's a lot of myth out there regarding refeeding and preparing for a fast. I think there's much complication that is put out there because people need to justify some fees that they take from people in order to organize some fasting retreats and things like that.
I've read about those fasting clinics and whatnot, which I find to be a bit baffling, because fasting is you do nothing, you eat nothing, you drink nothing. You don't need to go to a clinic to implement that unless you're really weak and you need some support to continue to not fast. So maybe they'll keep you busy, maybe they'll keep your mind distracted, which you could do on your own as well.
And I would agree that if you go into long fast, like a month.
Is there such a thing as not eating and drinking for a month?
No. In water fasting.
Water. Okay, so then that's a water diet.
Yes,
not
I
fasting.
think dry fasting, where you don't drink and not eat, it's really limited to up to, I would say, for most people, 3-4 days maybe.
I've heard maximum benefits would be by the 7th day, but you shouldn't fast beyond 7 days if it's possible. Is that correct?
For dry fasting, the real benefits begin with day 3.
Okay.
But I would not push it too much if you are not in a dire situation, right?
Right. So it's for the really unwell that would probably want to push it further. Because I have heard of people reversing their cancer and really, really serious, terminal illnesses by just fasting for a long period of time. Dry fasting, which means no food, no drink.
Yeah, but you can't do it for very extended period of time, so dry fasting, right?
Yeah, of
it's
course.
so powerful.
Yeah.
I think long periods of fasting are really not necessary when you're again not in a dire situation, because this autophagy is something very natural. So, when you enter this autophagy phase that starts in day probably 3 in dry fasting, your growth hormones are multiplied by 1,000.
That's remarkable.
And you have stem cells released everywhere to build, because the body recognizes that it needs to build.
So it's the real deal stem cell therapy.
It is.
Dry fasting is actually how you get stem cell therapy implemented into your body.
It is.
And I'm floored by that, because as I said, I'm new, and thank you so much for teaching me this and introducing it to me, because since I've been learning and even self-studying, I've learned autophagy is an essential part of the immune system, and it happens when you give your digestive system a rest. And typically it's by obviously dry fasting, which means no food and drink for a minimum of 3 days. And so I've almost gotten to the 3 days, and I've hit that autophagy phase, and you can feel when you've hit it, because something clicks and you are unlike anything you've ever felt before.
Yes. Most people today are very addicted to sugar. So, pushing through past 2 days, you may encounter some signs of withdrawal from sugar.
Yes.
It's really like a drug.
Sugar and I think caffeine are the two things that you probably miss during your dry fast.
Difficult,
maybe.
Yeah, difficult
if
to
anybody's
segregate,
hooked on it. Yeah.
Yes, but all the effects, you will get tired, you will get a little bit trembling. It's like someone who hasn't had his dose of cocaine or marijuana. I don't know,
it's a true addiction. Yeah,
it's really an addiction, and you know that. But when people are in this state and they just bite into an apple, for example, immediately all these signs disappear immediately.
Yeah,
and this piece of apple didn't have the chance to get digested and to bring some nutrients that would be missing. So it's purely psychological.
Yeah,
it brings us to the theme of hunger. We are used to, when we have some stomach sensations and grumbling in the stomach, we are told since a young age that, we are hungry. No, this thing that happens in our digestive system, little bubbling and noises, it's really a kind of cleaning process, right? It's the digestive system that is cleaning itself. Hunger, the real hunger, when you pass this addiction phase, it disappears. That you're not hungry, between brackets. The real hunger can appear after 30 days. And in this case, it is at the throat. And when you are really hungry, it's not in the stomach or in the digestive system. You feel it. You feel it in your throat, and you can't sleep.
So most people don't actually really even know hunger.
I think most people do not know what hunger is.
What they call hunger is probably withdrawals from their carbs and from their food
absolutely,
addictions.
Because we can go on without food without any problem for 30 days.
Yeah, so it's our withdrawals that are telling us we're hungry, but we're not. We're just desperate for our fix.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you go, and you can stop eating and drinking for 3 days, and just to break the spell and the fear. It doesn't need any special equipment or supervision. Try to push through. And then you refeed on clean food, meaning food that are very dense nutrient-wise, and it would be animal products.
Yeah.
So eggs, meat, especially ruminant meat, red meat, and eat a good steak,
Sure. So animal products is probably, and high fat animal products. So
Always,
great if you can get full fat, real deal butter and tallow and of course fatty meat. So you've always sort of taught that 30% red meat is probably the most ideal. 30% fat red meat, right, is always the most ideal. So a great, ribeye steak with 30 or 40% fat is always wonderful. So, those are the kinds of foods that, of course, I eat in between my fast. I also learned about mitophagy, or I think I'm saying it right, is when your body can metabolize old and damaged mitochondria, leaving space for new and healthier mitochondria. So the new healthy cells and mitochondria build your body and health back up and make you resistant to stress, inflammation, pain, and disease, and everything that makes our life worse. So again, I can't recommend it enough, but this mitophagy is actually what can only take place once you've reached the autophagy phase. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. I mean, it all boils down to the health of your mitochondria.
Okay.
And it is recently discovered that in the phase of autophagy, mitochondria also are being, let's say, revamped and renewed, so that they are the power energy of the cell. And any chronic disease, even cancer, can be boiled down to a disease of the mitochondria. So when they are healthy, you are healthy.
So it boils down to having just an extremely toxic mitochondria that needs to be cleaned out.
Yes.
Simplistically saying, of course. And so fasting, as you said, increases the human growth hormone. So after day 3 of your dry fast, you have now exponentially increased your human growth hormone to catapult our health. And that's across all levels, from tissue health, heart, cognitive function, bone and mineral density, asthma, weight, diabetes, like you said, cancer, and even some of the more really severe life-threatening conditions. And the more case studies that I look into, the more I'm amazed at how really simple, the approach is. People think that they have to go through all these experts and whatnot. And of course, consult the expert that you trust on this. This is just, my own experience and findings and through what I've learned from you. But of course, people should do their own research. But a part of fasting is also, there's a fasted exercise that's important to know about that I learned about. It's when fasting and exercising at the same time boosts your body, your state of health. And I don't know if I would have the energy to do that. I haven't come to that point where whilst I'm fasting, I also exercise, but I'm assuming it wouldn't be a really strenuous type of an exercise. It would be more sort of like basic muscle toning, maybe a couple of stomach crunches or push-ups, just to tone a little bit. That's probably the maximum I could do while I'm fasting, and I will try it.
Well, there's no contraindication in obviously using your body when you're fasting, because again, let's put ourselves into a natural environment. We need to hunt, and of course we need to move.
Right.
We need to exercise in order to catch an animal and to
even
eat.
in a state of fasting, of
course.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense that we would have to lay down for what,
Yeah.
Except when you are sick. When you are metabolically sick, you want all the energy available for the body to repair. So in this case, I would not recommend exercising.
And of course, we should listen to our body. Exerting and pushing ourselves to a
Exactly.
point
There's
of
no need to.
danger is obviously not a very
In
smart.
nature, when an animal is sick or injured, like a dog or a lion, they would just go into a quiet place and stay there and not move for several days and not eat. So these are just about us finding back the natural ways of healing.
Sure.
And there's nothing faddish about it.
Yeah.
It's not a fad. It's just going back to a natural way. The thing is, you cannot make money out of this.
Yeah, that's why it's not talked about. That's why nobody really knows much about it from any of the companies that may have an interest in our health. They would like to sell us something.
The results are spectacular. There was a German doctor who said that, and it's the main hospital in Hamburg, in Germany. It's one of the main hospitals of Europe. And they are dedicating a full floor to fasting, and they have tremendous results. And this doctor said, if I had discovered a pill that would give these results in people, I would have the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
But now it's just fasting, just between brackets, and nobody's really interested. The funding for research, etc., is not coming, because who's going to benefit from it?
Because if you had a pill to give you the same results that fasting gives you, then you can sell that pill, of course.
It, yeah.
Of course, yeah. And I think that's why there's fasting clinics and all these fasting retreats and whatnot, because that's the only way you can make money off of fasting is by convincing someone that, oh, you can't do it alone. It's so dangerous. You must do it under supervision, and therefore come and stay at our clinic for a week and we'll help you to get through it. But you and I know that that's absolutely not necessary. You can, of course, fast anywhere and any time, and it's not that difficult, and it's completely under your own control. So if you feel like you're just not going to make it, you can, of course, replenish yourself with a little bit of salt, which I haven't done yet, but I know that I know a couple of people that, they just feel like they need some sort of electrolytes, and salt is a great way to get that in, but then they continue to fast. And of course, that is one way to get through whatever time frame of fasting. But speaking of time frames, there's also the shorter fasts, right? Which we were talking about, the intermittent. In my case, I try to eat one meal a day if I'm doing the intermittent. So I try not to do anything shorter than, say, to 22 hours or 23 hours, because I think if I fast for 22 hours or 23 hours and then just eat for that 1 hour, sit and just relax and eat and drink, I feel optimal. And I've gotten myself to a point where I eat a lot, so I don't feel hungry for the rest of the day. And of course, for a part of that, I'm sleeping anyway, so it works out. But are we to expect autophagy and intermittent fasting in shorter forms of fasting, or does that only happen in the long form dry fast?
I mean, the research is still going on. I think we know very little about the functioning of the body. I think that autophagy is always there. It's a main function of the body.
Yeah.
It is really exacerbated after 3 days. There's probably a multiplication of the kicking of this process, but it exists constantly. So I would say, I would not call, we have to be precise in the words. Fasting probably should only be used when you have exhausted all your reserves of sugar. And it happens within 24, 48 hours. Mm-hmm. When we call intermittent fasting, I think we are playing a little bit with words. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be fasting. It would be probably returning to a normal way of eating.
Right.
And the common way of eating, which is several times a day, would be gorging. So we are gorging and we go back to eating normally.
But that's a new concept anyway, relatively. In the recent generations, they've introduced this eating several times a day, like you must have a breakfast, you must have a lunch, and you must have a dinner. And of course, that really does keep the grocery stores and all the retail stores busy, right? With us buying things for preparing our meals and preparing, our various foods and dinners and social activities around food. So traditionally, or optimally, I should say, it's not 3 meals a day.
No, and it has never been. First, because food was scarce here, and second, because it's not necessary. When you eat at satiety, a dense food,
to satiation, yeah.
You don't need to eat several times.
And that's actually what the good deal is here. most people that are trying to lose weight or they're told, oh, in order for you to be healthy, you have to deprive yourself somehow, like eat less or eat smaller portions or, don't do this or that. It's always the don't do's, right? But in the case of doing it optimally, you should eat and eat and eat, which I do outside of my fasting, but I just eat the fatty animal-based food, which goes right to all the right places and it gets rid of the toxins and it replaces the toxic fat with a healthier fat. So you not only get your optimal body, your figure, but you're amazingly fit and you feel incredibly healthy. So there's this myth around depriving yourself in order for you to feel better and be better.
Absolutely. And this is why the several times a day is because the food that is proposed today is not that nutrients dense. Mm-hmm. So you eat and then you don't feel satiated. The body doesn't have what it needs, so it's asking for more.
Right.
The point is to give the body what it needs to work and let it alone so that it can do what it needs to do in terms of repair, in terms of functioning.
Because we need healthy mitochondria more than anything. Chronic inflammation, which is one of the results of having toxins and being unhealthy, has the biggest impact on our health. And people don't realize chronic inflammation is what leads to all the problems that people are suffering with, including us aging, all the signs of aging, including, like you said earlier, sagging skin and wrinkles and, even our eyesight and just the health of our eyes and glow in our, skin and body and so on. This is also, very much so impacted by all of this. And, chronic inflammation, once we can handle it, once we can get our mitochondria healthy again, reverses age-related neurodegenerative conditions, including dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and the risk of stroke. So apart from visible signs of aging, eating well and sleeping well alongside fasting is kind of like that full picture to complete that process of staying healthy and alive.
Absolutely. I mean, the body is meant to work in a specific way. And each time we try to work in a different way, we just introduce parasites, parasitic processes that we make the life of the body more complicated, or we are introducing lacks and problems. So a food that is optimal in terms of nutrition, very dense, and again, let the body work and don't tax it constantly by these digestive processes.
Another thing I noticed is, as we've discussed before, I'm not a huge workout person. And, I love that you and I go for walks and we really do try to be as manually oriented. So, we'll walk up an incline and try to be as active as we can. But apart from that, I wouldn't say that I work out. But what I find fascinating is that my muscles are building and toning almost automatically. I remember I mentioned that to you before too, a couple of days ago when I was looking at my muscles and I was like, wow, this is really taking shape in a beautiful way. So they're just kind of looking more fit and it's kind of shaping the body in a more healthy manner. And is that because of the animal-based food? Is it the protein primarily?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, probably 90% of the shape of your body is determined by what you eat.
Sure. So nutrient-dense food, which includes obviously the meats that we talked about, the fatty meats, but of course, full-fat yogurt, full-fat milk, full-fat cheese. We primarily want to stick to those things that come from an animal.
Yes, absolutely, because these foods are devoid of toxins, natural toxins.
Mm-hmm. And some people do add seasonal fruit, but of course that has to be really managed because it really has to be genuinely seasonal from the region that you are in.
Absolutely. And now we are bombarded in supermarkets with fruits from all over the world all the time.
Yeah.
And there's much excess in there. Our bodies, fructose is processed by the body exactly as alcohol is.
Yeah.
Through the liver. And we see cases today of fatty liver disease that were in the past only seen in alcoholic people and probably pretty old. And now children have this.
Very scary. Very scary.
Because of all this orange juice. And we mean well. We are told that fruits are so good for us. that we are juicing
Yeah.
and we are overwhelming the body with harmful substances.
That's got to feel strenuous too. Just like, again, in the case of exercising too, I think overtraining can be strenuous on your body. From what little I'm studying so far, we want the light resistance type of exercise, like the walking, as much as we can. And then I've also added, or starting to add, the squats and the lunges. I've been doing push-ups and sit-ups, but I'm just trying to do things that are kind of natural movements, which I can sort of focus on a daily basis, if possible. I'm trying to stay away from what could be over stressful on myself and hence dangerous. But one area that's a bit gray to many people, it's very clear to me now, is the area of supplements. Is that advisable? Supplements, herbals, essential oils, people tend to incorporate that into their daily protocol.
Yes, and I always wondered about that. How can we try to get the most natural way in terms of food, etc.? We've been on this planet for millions of years. Mm-hmm. Who had access to any of these chemical supplements produced in the same factories that produce all the products of Big Pharma?
Not to mention how toxic it is in the capsules and in the way they come for you to ingest.
Yes, and all these vitamins are isolated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you take supplements of vitamin E or vitamin A or whatever. The problem is that there are many forms of these same vitamins in nature, and they are always associated with other substances, and they work in synergy, and they are all perfectly balanced.
Yeah.
In the food we're supposed to eat.
Yeah.
Now we take one of these elements that we have identified as lacking for whatever reason, and we ingest that, and now we are creating imbalances in our body.
So protein shakes, green shakes, all this trendy stuff that people are doing is almost ridiculous now by my standard. Right. After learning what animal-based food can do for you, which is equally, if not more, than the shakes and the smoothies and so on.
Exactly. And just let's be a little bit humble and look at a lion in nature or a wolf. Mm-hmm. Does he need any supplements to be in perfect health?
Yeah.
No. Why would we? If we are shooting for optimal health, any need for any supplement, except if it's a temporary crunch. If we really put ourselves, because of errors, in a very dire situation, maybe we can, try to reload some of these things that could be missing.
But until you've given yourself a chance on these natural foods, and really tested the proposition, people shouldn't mess with supplements or smoothies or shakes.
No, because we are really creating imbalances and creating other problems.
And the herbals should be an absolute no-no, especially the herbals and the essential oils and what people tend to do.
Exactly. These are chemical compounds that are very powerful.
Okay, what about pregnant women? Can they fast?
Of course.
During pregnancy?
Of course.
But how?
No doctor will say that openly or as straight as I do.
Yeah. But how?
Again, imagine yourself, we are 50,000 years ago and there's no food for 4 days. Do you think that all pregnant woman will die and the baby die? Absolutely not.
But then how is it good for the baby that the mother is fasting for long periods of time?
The baby is getting his nutrient anyway from the reserves of the mother.
Okay.
And the mother has reserves on her.
So the fasting probably fast tracks her, in her condition, probably fast tracks her health because she reaches autophagy a lot quicker because the baby's helping her to eat up her reserves.
Yes, but everything is a matter of proportion. You don't need to go there if you are healthy.
Sure. But can you do intermittent just to maintain?
Absolutely. If you look at things objectively, what counts for the body is probably what you eat in a week. So if you could eat, for example, on Saturday, all the food you would eat on the 6 other days, it would be as good as if you were eating in 7 times in a week, So we are really determined and not kind of brainwashed in thinking that we need to eat every day. When we fast, like 2-3 days, the 4th day, let's focus on that day, try to catch up on what we have not eaten in the previous days.
Right. So don't miss out on the quantity of the food that you've missed out on during your fast. Try to eat, which I think I've kind of figured it out because that was hard for me. It was hard for me to eat a lot of food. I just don't have a huge appetite. But doing the intermittent, I realized that I can eat 1 day's worth of food in one sitting.
Yes.
Because I'm not a big eater anyway. So for me, it's collectively not that much. but I've managed to get myself to be that hungry, and then you just don't get
And
hungry.
it's a matter of habit. The essential point is not to deprive the body, is to not reduce the quantities.
Yeah.
We need to provide the body what it needs. It has needs, objective needs, and we need to provide that. It's our responsibility.
Yeah.
If you go below these needs, you will make the body react in a way that, oh, since food is scarce, I will adjust my metabolic rate. I will lower it, right? It's like an engine that cannot work at a certain speed that now is going to a lower speed. And now you feel tired all the time. And you can adjust and live with less food. But now when you start to get back to normal eating, the body still works at this lower speed. And every excess food, which is between what you were depriving and the normal, will be stored as fat. So this is why, cutting back calories, etc., never works. You need to work in eating proper food and proper quantity and provide the nutrients the body needs.
And it totally makes sense. This is a game changer. The fasting, nutrient-dense, animal-based eating, and mild exercising. As I mentioned, it's impacted my happiness, my just sort of like this inner joy. You just feel really alive. And I've read that it actually has cured a lot of people's mental illnesses and among, of course, the horrible diseases, no matter how serious. So this mental state really does optimize. So I wonder, and I don't know any direct cases myself about depression and any form of psychosis, but I'm assuming it's really made a difference in people's lives.
Oh yes, there are research that are endless. There is a documentary out there called The Science of Fasting, 2012.
We saw that, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
And
yeah.
the first part of this documentary is about research that were conducted in Soviet Union. So Russia has a huge tradition of fasting. And one day in a hospital, a psychiatrist, the chief psychiatrist of the main hospital of Moscow, he had a schizophrenic person coming in. And this person was totally aphasic, didn't want to speak, and was totally reserved and prostrated. And because he had this history of fasting in his family and the person didn't want to eat, normally the protocol was to force feed every day, even through IVs and etc. He just said, okay, if we don't force feed this person for many days, it will not be a problem. And they let him in his room, and after 10 days, he sat on his bed. And the next day, he asked for food. And he was a schizophrenic person, and now he was totally communicating. And they were very intrigued, these Soviet doctors. And you have hundreds of meters of files because they were, Marxist medicine trying to measure everything objectively, very material approach. And so they have the levels of hormones, the levels of nutrients, etc. in people fasting, and the results on this psychiatric hospital on mental health. And they have cases of resolution of schizophrenia and depression, etc. through fasting. But all this research is ignored, right? Never translated in any language.
It's true. You don't find it in any mainstream sources.
But it's rediscovered now, fortunately.
By whom? Who are the type of people that are now bringing it back to the forefront? Or are there any people successfully doing that? Yes,
of course. One of the best sources, if you want to know more about the mechanisms of fasting, the way to use it, it's a wonderful doctor, nephrologist in Canada. His name is Jason Fung, Fung. And he has a clinic in Canada and is mainly focused on fasting. He wrote several books that are really interesting if you want to know more.
Amazing. It's nothing short of a miracle. And the most exciting part is the best miracles in life are right at our fingertips. We need not go any further. We are fully equipped to live a fulfilling, healthy, and happy life within our own means.